GitHub Copilot Cheat Sheet in Cloud-Native Applications Introduction. GitHub Copilot is an AI-powered coding assistant that helps developers write, review, explain, test, and refactor code. Cloud-native applications are applications designed to run in modern cloud environments using containers, microservices, Kubernetes, CI/CD, observability, and scalable infrastructure. Software engineers often use GitHub Copilot in cloud-native projects to speed up Spring Boot development, Spring API creation, Docker file writing, Kubernetes YAML creation, Helm chart updates, GitHub Actions workflows, unit test generation, integration test writing, logging improvements, observability setup, code review, documentation, refactoring. A common learning topic is: how can software engineers use GitHub Copilot effectively in cloud-native applications? This cheat sheet explains Copilot basics, prompt patterns, Spring Boot prompts, Docker prompts, Kubernetes prompts, Helm prompts, CI/CD prompts, testing prompts, observability prompts, security prompts, debugging prompts, review prompts, best practices, common mistakes. GitHub's official Copilot documentation describes Copilot as a tool that can help with tasks such as code explanation, debugging, code review, GitHub Actions assistance, pull requests, and issue management. GitHub also documents Copilot coding agent features that can research a repository, create a plan, change code on a branch, and help open pull requests. Simple definition: GitHub Copilot is an AI assistant that helps developers write and improve code using natural language prompts. Simple idea: developer asks, create a Spring Boot REST controller for orders. Copilot helps generate controller DTO service method test cases. Cloud native usage: developer asks, create Kubernetes deployment YAML for this Spring Boot app. Copilot helps generate deployment service config map, health probes, resource limits. Why cloud-native developers use GitHub Copilot? Cloud-native developers use Copilot to work faster on microservices, REST APIs, Docker, Kubernetes, Helm, Terraform, CI/CD pipelines, GitHub Actions, cloud deployment files, monitoring setup, logging improvements, test automation. Backend developers already understand check, Java, APIs, databases, deployment, security, system design. Copilot helps convert these ideas into code, config, tests, and documentation. Important rule: GitHub Copilot is helpful, but it is not always correct. You must always review generated code, security logic, cloud configuration, Kubernetes YAML, Docker file instructions, secrets handling, test accuracy, performance impact, dependency versions. Research and developer discussions continue to highlight risks such as insecure suggestions, data leakage concerns, prompt injection, licensing issues, and reliability problems with AI coding assistants. Security studies have also found that AI-generated code can contain vulnerabilities, so generated code should be reviewed, tested, and scanned before merging. Simple rule: Copilot suggests, developer verifies. GitHub Copilot use cases in cloud-native apps. Area Copilot can help with Spring Boot controllers, services, DTOs, tests. Docker Dockerfile, Docker Compose, Kubernetes deployment, service, config map, Helm values.yaml, templates, CI/CD, GitHub Actions workflows, testing, unit and integration tests, observability, logs, metrics, tracing, security review, validation, hardening, documentation README, runbooks, API docs, debugging, explain errors and stack traces, cloud-native architecture, example React frontend, API gateway, Spring Boot, microservice, PostgreSQL, Redis, Kafka RabbitMQ, Docker, Kubernetes, CI/CD, Prometheus plus Grafana. Copilot can help at every layer, but you should validate every output. Step 1. Use clear prompts. Bad prompt. Create API. Better prompt. Create a Spring Boot 3 REST controller for order management with endpoints. Get API orders. Get API orders with ID. Post API orders. Put API orders with ID. Delete API orders with ID. Use DTOs, validation, response entity, and service layer. Why better? Check. Specific framework, specific endpoints, specific structure, specific coding style, better output. Step 2. Give context before asking. Bad. Write test. Better. This is a Spring Boot 3 order service using JUnit 5 and Mockito. Generate unit tests for create order, cancel order, and get order by ID. Mock order repository and verify exception handling. Copilot works better when you provide col framework, col language version, col project style, col expected behavior, col edge cases, col test framework. Step 3. Use Copilot for Spring Boot controllers. Prompt. Create a Spring Boot 3 REST controller for product API. Requirements. Base path, API products. Get all products. Get product by ID. Post create product. Put update product. Delete product. Use product request and product response DTOs. Use @valid for request validation. Return response entity. Delegate logic to product service. Expected output. Controller class. Endpoint mappings. DTO usage. Validation. Service method calls. Review checklist. Endpoint paths correct. HTTP methods correct. Validation present. No business logic in controller. Correct status codes. Step 4. Use Copilot for service layer. Prompt. Create a product service class for Spring Boot. Requirements. Create product, product request request. Update product, long ID, product request request. Get product, long ID, get all products. Delete product, long ID. Throw resource not found exception when product does not exist. Map entity to DTO. Review checklist. Check transaction boundaries. Check exception handling. Check null checks. Check repository usage. Check DTO mapping. Check no controller logic inside service. Step 5. Use Copilot for repository queries. Prompt. Create Spring Data JPA repository methods for product entity. Requirements. Find by category. Search by name containing keyword case insensitive. Find active products. Find products by price range. Use pageable for search. Expected output. Page product. Find by name containing ignore case. String keyword. Pageable. Pageable. Review checklist. Method names valid. Query performance acceptable. Pagination used. Indexes considered. No unsafe dynamic SQL. Step 6. Use Copilot for DTOs. Prompt. Create product request and product response DTOs for a Spring Boot free application. Product request. Name required. Description optional. Price required and positive. Category required. Stock quantity required and non-negative. Use Jakarta validation annotations. Expected output. DTO classes at not blank, at not null, at positive, that positive or 0. Review checklist. Uses Jakarta.validation, not old javax.validation. Validation matches business rules. No sensitive fields exposed. Step 7. Use Copilot for unit tests. Prompt. Generate JUnit 5 and Mockito unit tests for product service. Test cases. Create product should save product successfully. Get product should return product when found. Get product should throw resource not found exception when missing. Delete product should delete existing product. Use Mockito extension. Review checklist. Tests actually assert behavior. Mocks are meaningful. Exception cases included. No useless tests. No copied implementation logic. Step 8. Use Copilot for integration tests. Prompt. Create Spring Boot integration tests for product controller using mock MVC. Requirements. Test post API products validation failure. Test get API products /ID success. Test get API products /ID not found. Use @Spring Boot test. Use @autoconfigureMockMVC. Review checklist. Correct status codes, correct body valid, correct validation tested, correct security considered. Step 9. Use Copilot for test containers. Prompt. Create a Spring Boot integration test using test containers with PostgreSQL. Requirements. Use PostgreSQL container. Configure data source dynamically with @dynamic property source. Test product repository save and find. Use JUnit 5. Useful for, real database testing, CI/CD validation, repository tests, integration testing. Review checklist. Container lifecycle correct. Dynamic properties correct. Test isolation. Cleanup strategy. Step 10. Use Copilot for Dockerfile. Prompt. Create a production-ready multi-stage Dockerfile for a Spring Boot 3 application using Java 21 and Gradle. Requirements. Build stage with Gradle. Runtime stage with JRE. Copy boot jar. Run as non-root user. Expose port 8080. Use efficient layer caching. Review checklist. Check multi-stage build. Check non-root user. Check small runtime image. Check correct jar path. Check no secrets copied. Check health check if needed. Step 11. Use Copilot for Docker Compose. Prompt. Create dockercompose.yml for local development. Services. Spring Boot app on port 8080. Postgres on port 5432. Redis on port 6379. RabbitMQ with Management UI on 15672. Use environment variables. Add health checks. Create named volumes. Review checklist. Check ports correct. Environment variables safe. Volumes configured. Health checks useful. App waits for dependencies carefully. Step 12. Use Copilot for Kubernetes deployment. Prompt. Create Kubernetes YAML for a Spring Boot microservice. Resources. Deployment with 3 replicas. Service cluster IP. Config map for application config. Secret references for database credentials. Readiness probe /actuator health readiness. Liveness probe /actuator health /liveness. CPU and memory requests limits. Image pull policy, if not present. Review checklist. Check. Probes correct. Resource limits realistic. Secrets not hard-coded. Labels selectors match. Container port correct. Replicas appropriate. Step 13. Use Copilot for Kubernetes probes. Prompt. Add Kubernetes readiness and liveness probes for a Spring Boot app using Actuator. Application exposes. Actuator health readiness. Actuator health liveness. Port 8080. Generate only the container probe YAML section. Expected output. Readiness probe. HTTP GET. Path actuator health readiness. Port 8080. Initial delay seconds 20. Period seconds 10. Liveness probe. HTTP GET. Path actuator health liveness. Port 8080. Initial delay seconds 60. Period seconds 20. Review checklist. Paths enabled in Spring Boot. Startup delay not too short. Liveness does not kill slow starting app. Readiness checks dependencies carefully. Step 14. Use Copilot for config map. Prompt. Create a Kubernetes config map for Spring Boot application configuration. Include Spring Profiles Active Prod, Server Port 8080, Logging Level Root Info, Management Endpoints Web Exposure include Health, Info, Prometheus. Review checklist. No passwords in config map. Environment names correct. Values match app config. Prometheus endpoint exposed intentionally. Step 15. Use Copilot for Kubernetes secret template. Prompt. Create a Kubernetes secret YAML template for database credentials. Use placeholders only. Do not include real passwords. Fields. DB username, DB password, JWT secret. Important. Never ask Copilot to generate real secrets. Never commit real secrets. Review checklist. Placeholders only. Base 64 values not treated as secure encryption. Secrets managed by Secret Manager in production. Step 16. Use Copilot for Helm charts. Prompt. Create a Helm chart template for a Spring Boot microservice deployment. Use values for image.repository, image.tag, replica count, service.port, resources, env, readiness probe, liveness probe. Review checklist. Check. Values are reusable. Check templates render correctly. Indentation valid. Labels consistent. Secrets handled separately. Step 17. Use Copilot for GitHub Actions CI. Prompt. Create a GitHub Actions workflow for a Java 21 Spring Boot Gradle project. Workflow. Trigger on pull request and push to main. Checkout code. Set up Java 21. Cache Gradle dependencies. Run./Gradleway clean test. Run./Gradleway bootjar. Upload test reports if tests fail. GitHub's Copilot docs include GitHub Actions helper capabilities, and Copilot can help create or explain workflows. Review checklist. Uses correct Java version, caches safely, does not expose secrets, runs tests, fails build on errors, uploads useful artifacts. Step 18. Use Copilot for Docker build workflow. Prompt. Create GitHub Actions workflow to build and push Docker image. Requirements. Trigger on push to main. Log into container registry using GitHub secrets. Build Docker image. Tag with commit SHA and latest. Push image. Do not hardcode credentials. Review checklist. Secrets used correctly. Image tags predictable. Permissions minimal. Registry correct. Step 19. Use Copilot for Kubernetes deployment workflow. Prompt. Create a GitHub Actions workflow step to deploy to Kubernetes. Requirements. Use kubeconfig from GitHub secret. Set image tag to current commit SHA. Run kubectl apply. Verify rollout status. Fail workflow if rollout fails. Review checklist. Kubeconfig protected. Namespace correct. Rollout checked. Production deploy requires approval if needed. Step 20. Use Copilot for observability. Prompt. Add structured logging to this Spring Boot service. Requirements. Include correlation ID. Include order ID when available. Log start and completion. Log duration mil. Do not log sensitive data. Review checklist. Kick. No passwords tokens logged. Correlation ID included. Error logs useful. Logs not too noisy. Duration captured. Step 21. Use Copilot for Prometheus metrics. Prompt. Add micrometer metrics to order service. Metrics. Counter for orders created. Counter for order failures. Timer for order processing duration. Tag by status only. Avoid high cardinality tags like user ID or order ID. Review checklist. No high cardinality labels. Timer used correctly. Counters named clearly. Metrics useful for alerts. Step 22. Use Copilot for OpenTelemetry. Prompt. Show how to add OpenTelemetry tracing to a Spring Boot service. Requirements. Explain trace ID and span ID. Add example of propagating correlation ID. Show how logs can include trace ID. Review checklist. Tracing does not expose sensitive data. Propagation correct. Logs include trace context. Performance overhead considered. Step 23. Use Copilot for security review. Prompt. Review this Spring Boot controller for security issues. Check for missing authorization, unsafe input handling, sensitive data exposure, insecure logging, missing validation, mass assignment, improper error handling. GitHub documents Copilot code review as a feature that can review code and provide feedback, sometimes with suggested changes. Important. Copilot review is helpful, but it does not replace human review or security scanning. Step 24. Use Copilot for Kubernetes security review. Prompt. Review this Kubernetes deployment YAML for security issues. Check. Running as root, missing resource limits, privileged mode, host path usage, secrets in plain text, missing probes, image tag latest, excessive permissions. Review checklist. Run as non-root enabled. Resource limits set. No privileged containers. No secrets in YAML. Image tag pinned. Service account permissions minimal. Step 25. Use Copilot for Docker file security review. Prompt. Review this Docker file for production security issues. Check. Non-root user. Image size. Secret leakage. Package manager cache. Unnecessary tools. Exposed ports. Layer caching. Vulnerable base image risk. Review checklist. COC. No secrets copied. COC. No root runtime. COC. Dependencies minimal. COC. Base image maintained. Build artifacts cleaned. Step 26. Use Copilot for debugging logs. Prompt. Explain the Spring Boot error log and suggest likely root causes. Context. Running in Kubernetes. App uses PostgreSQL and RabbitMQ. Error appears after deployment. Includes step-by-step debugging commands. Use for stack trace explanation. Root cause ideas. Debugging checklist. Kubernetes command suggestions. Log interpretation. Review checklist. Commands are safe. Root cause verified. Not blindly applied. Production impact considered. Step 27. Use Copilot for Kubernetes troubleshooting. Prompt. Create a troubleshooting checklist for a Kubernetes pod in crash loop backoff. Include kubectl get pods, kubectl describe pod, kubectl logs, environment variables, config map, secret references, readiness liveness probes, image pull issues, resource limits. Useful commands. kubectl get pods in my namespace. kubectl describe pod my pod in my namespace. kubectl logs my pod in my namespace. kubectl logs my pod in my namespace. Review checklist. Namespace correct. Logs checked. Events checked. Config checked. Probes checked. Step 28. Use Copilot for README documentation. Prompt. Create README documentation for the Spring Boot Cloud Native Service. Include service purpose, local setup, required environment variables, Gradle commands, Docker commands, Docker Compose setup, API endpoints, testing, Kubernetes deployment, troubleshooting. Good README helps. Check. Onboarding, debugging, handover, production support, interview explanation. Step 29. Use Copilot for runbooks. Prompt. Create a production runbook for order service. Include service overview, dependencies, dashboards, alerts, common failures, debugging commands, rollback steps, escalation notes. Runbooks are useful for calendar incidents, support teams, on-call engineers, cloud-native operations. Step 30. Use Copilot for pull request review. Prompt. Review this pull request as a senior cloud-native engineer. Focus on correctness, security, test coverage, Kubernetes readiness, Docker image quality, observability, error handling, backward compatibility, performance. Copilot can also support pull request and code review workflows directly in GitHub's product experience, depending on your plan and enabled features. GitHub's current docs describe Copilot features such as code review, pull request assistance, cloud agent work, and issue-related workflows. GitHub Copilot prompt cheat sheet. Controller prompt. Create a Spring Boot 3 REST controller for entity. Requirements. Base path. API:/entities. CRUD endpoints. Use DTOs. Use @valid. Return response entity. Delegate to service layer. Requirements. Constructor injection. Transactional where needed. Custom exception handling. Map entity to DTO. Include edge cases. Test prompt. Generate JUnit 5 and Mockito tests for this service. Include success cases, validation failures, not found cases, repository interaction verification, exception assertions. Docker prompt. Create a production-ready multi-stage Docker file for this app. Requirements. Java 21. Gradle build. Non-root runtime user. Small image. No secrets. Expose port 8080. Kubernetes prompt. Create Kubernetes deployment and service YAML. Include replicas, labels selectors, readiness/liveness probes, resource request/limits, N from config map and secret, non-root security context, CI/CD prompt, create GitHub Actions workflow. Requirements: run on pull request, set up Java 21, cache Gradle, run tests, build jar, build Docker image, do not expose secrets. Observability prompt, add observability to this service. Include structured logs, correlation ID, micrometer metrics, timer for main operation, no sensitive data in logs. Security prompt, review this code for security issues. Check. Authentication, authorization, input validation, sensitive data leakage, insecure logs, SQL injection risk, unsafe deserialization, cloud-native Copilot workflow. Recommended workflow. 1. Ask Copilot for initial draft. 2. Review generated code. 3. Run tests. 4. Run static analysis. 5. Run security scan. 6. Run locally. 7. Run in Docker. 8. Deploy to dev Kubernetes. 9. Review logs and metrics. 10. Create PR for human review. Never do. Generate code means commit directly means deploy to production. Better. Generate code means review, means test, means scan, means improve, means merge. Real-world example, order microservice. Architecture. React frontend, Spring Boot, order service, PostgreSQL, RabbitMQ, Docker, Kubernetes, GitHub Actions, Prometheus plus Grafana. Use Copilot to generate. Check. Order controller, order service, order repository, DTOs, validation, unit tests, integration tests, Docker file, Kubernetes YAML, GitHub Actions workflow, README, runbook. Copilot for Spring Boot Cloud Native Tasks Prompt 1. Create REST API. Create a Spring Boot 3 REST API for order management. Use Java 21, DTOs, Jakarta validation, JPA, PostgreSQL, response entity, global exception handler. Prompt 2. Add global exception handler. Create a Spring Boot global exception handler. Handle. Resource not found exception. Method argument not valid exception. Access denied exception. Generic exception. Return structured error response with timestamp, error code, message, and path. Prompt 3. Add actuator health configure Spring Boot actuator for Kubernetes. Enable health, info, Prometheus, liveness, readiness. Show application.yml configuration. Prompt 4. Add Docker file. Create a multi-stage Docker file for this Spring Boot Gradle app. Use Java 21. Run as non-root user. Optimize build cache. Prompt 5. Add K8 manifests. Create Kubernetes manifests for this service. Include deployment, service, config map, secret template, readiness probe, liveness probe, resource limits. Copilot for Kubernetes YAML deployment. Prompt generate Kubernetes deployment YAML for a Spring Boot service. Details. App name, order service. Image, my registry order service 1.0.0. Port, 8080. Replicas, 3. CPU request, 250M. Memory request, 512MI. CPU limit, 500M. Memory limit, 1 GI. Readiness path, /actuator health, /readiness. Liveness path, /actuator health, /liveness. Service prompt generate Kubernetes cluster IP. Service YAML for order service on port 8080. Make sure selector matches deployment labels. Config map prompt, generate config map YAML for order service with non-sensitive Spring Boot environment variables. Secret prompt, generate secret YAML template for order service using placeholder values only. Do not include real secrets. Copilot for GitHub Actions pull request build to create GitHub Actions workflow for pull requests. Steps. Checkout. Set up Java 21. Cache Gradle. Run ... gradlu clean test. Upload test report on failure. Docker build create GitHub Actions workflow to build Docker image for Spring Boot app. Use Docker buildx. GitHub container registry. Commit SHA tag. Latest tag only on main. Secrets for authentication. Kubernetes deploy. Create GitHub Actions workflow to deploy to Kubernetes. Requirements. Manual approval for production. Use kubeconfig secret. Set image tag from commit SHA. kubectl rollout status. Rollback note if rollout fails. Copilot for testing. Unit test prompt. Generate unit tests for this class using JUnit 5 and Mockito. Focus on success path, validation errors, exceptions, repository mock behavior, edge cases. Integration test prompt. Generate integration tests for this Spring Boot controller using mock MVC. Include happy path, bad request, unauthorized, forbidden, not found. Testcontainers prompt. Create test container setup for PostgreSQL integration test. Use PostgreSQL container. Dynamic property source. JUnit 5. Spring Boot test Copilot for observability. Logging prompt. Improve logging for this service. Requirements. Structured logs, correlation ID, duration MS, business ID, no sensitive data, clear error logs. Metrics prompt. Add micrometer metrics. Include counter for successful operations, counter for failed operations, timer for processing duration, avoid high cardinality tags. Tracing prompt. Explain how to add distributed tracing to this Spring Boot microservice running on Kubernetes. Include OpenTelemetry concepts and trace propagation. Copilot for security. Spring Security prompt. Create Spring Security configuration for a Spring Boot 3 REST API. Requirements. JWT resource server. Stateless sessions. Public API off/off. Protect all other endpoints. Role-based access for API admin/off. API security review. Prompt review this API for OWASP security risks. Check. Broken access control, injection, insecure design, authentication failures, sensitive data exposure, logging problems. Kubernetes security prompt. Review this Kubernetes manifest for security hardening. Check. Non-root user, read-only root file system, resource limits, no privileged mode, minimal service account permissions, no hard-coded secrets. Copilot for debugging stack trace prompt. Explain the stack trace. Context. Spring Boot 3, Java 21, Kubernetes, PostgreSQL, RabbitMQ. Give. Likely root cause. How to reproduce. How to fix. Tests to add. Kubernetes error prompt. Explain why this Kubernetes pod is in crash loop backoff. Use the logs and describe output below. Give a debugging checklist and likely fixes. Docker error prompt. Fix this Docker build error. Context. Gradle Spring Boot app. Java 21, multi-stage Docker file. Explain the root cause and corrected Docker file section. Copilot best practices in cloud-native apps. Check. Give clear prompts. Include framework versions. Include project context. Ask for tests with every feature. Ask for security review. Ask for observability improvements. Review every generated file. Run code locally. Run tests. Scan dependencies. Scan containers. Validate Kubernetes YAML. Secrets. Use human PR review. Prefer small focused prompts. Iterate instead of asking for everything at once. Keep architecture decisions human-owned. Common beginner mistakes. 1. Asking very short prompts. Bad. Make Docker file. Better. Create a production-ready multi-stage Docker file for Java 21 Spring Boot Gradle app with non-root runtime user. Trusting generated YAML without testing. Always run. kubectl apply dry run equals client. F deployment.yaml. And check. kubectl describe pod kubectl logs 3. Letting Copilot generate secrets. Never ask for real secrets. Bad. Generate JWT secret and database password. Better. Some. Generate secret YAML using placeholder values only. 4. Skipping security review. Generated code may miss. Check. Authorization checks. Check. Validation. Secure logging. Safe defaults. Error handling. 5. Skipping tests. Always ask. Now, generate unit tests and integration tests for this code. 6. Too much code in one prompt. Bad. Build full microservice with Docker, Kubernetes, CI/CD, tests, database, and monitoring. Better. Step 1. Create controller. Step 2. Create service. Step 3. create tests. Step 4, create Docker file. Step 5, create Kubernetes YAML. Copilot review checklist. Before merging Copilot-generated code, check. Does it compile? Do tests pass? Are edge cases handled? Is authorization correct? Are secrets safe? Are logs safe? Are errors handled? Is performance acceptable? Is Kubernetes YAML valid? Are resource limits set? Are probes correct? Is documentation accurate? Did a human review the PR? Interview. Questions. 1. What is GitHub Copilot? GitHub Copilot is an AI-powered coding assistant that helps developers write, explain, review, test, and improve code. 2. How can Copilot help in cloud-native applications? It can help generate Spring Boot code, Docker files, Kubernetes manifests, Helm templates, CI/CD workflows, tests, observability code, and documentation. 3. Should Copilot-generated code be trusted directly? No. It should be reviewed, tested, scanned, and validated before merging. 4. How do you write a good Copilot prompt? Include. Check. Language, framework, version, requirements, constraints, expected output, edge cases. 5. How can Copilot help with Kubernetes? It can draft deployment, service, config map, secret templates, probes, resource limits, and troubleshooting steps. 6. How can Copilot help with CI/CD? It can generate GitHub Actions workflows for build, test, Docker image creation, registry push, and Kubernetes deployment. 7. What are the risks of using Copilot? Risks include insecure code, wrong assumptions, outdated patterns, missing edge cases, data leakage, and incorrect configuration. 8. How do you use Copilot safely? Use human review, tests, security scanning, dependency scanning, container scanning, and careful prompt boundaries. 9. Can Copilot replace software engineers? No. Copilot helps with implementation, review, and productivity, but engineers are still responsible for architecture, correctness, security, testing, and production reliability. 10. What should you never put in Copilot prompts? Avoid putting no passwords, API keys, private credentials, production secrets, sensitive customer data, confidential business data, unless your organization explicitly allows it. 30-day learning plan, Week 1, Copilot Basics. Learn. Check. Prompts, code completion, chat usage, code explanation, refactoring, test generation. Practice. Use Copilot to create simple Spring Boot CRUD code. Week 2, Cloud Native Files. Learn. Docker file prompts, Docker Compose prompts, Kubernetes YAML prompts, config map and secret templates, probes, resource limits. Practice. Containerize and deploy a Spring Boot app locally. Week 3, CI/CD and testing. Learn. GitHub Actions workflow prompts, unit test prompts, integration test prompts, Testcontainers prompts, PR review prompts. Practice. Create CI pipeline for Spring Boot service. Week 4, production readiness. Learn. Check. Observability prompts, logging prompts, metrics prompts, security review prompts, runbook prompts, troubleshooting prompts. Practice. Create production-ready cloud-native service documentation and monitoring checklist. Real-world project, cloud-native order service with Copilot. Build. Order service using Spring Boot, PostgreSQL, RabbitMQ, Docker, Kubernetes, and GitHub Actions. Use Copilot for check entity, repository, service, controller, DTOs, validation, unit tests, integration tests, Docker file, Docker Compose, Kubernetes manifests, GitHub Actions, README, runbook, security review. Architecture. React UI, Spring Boot Order API, PostgreSQL, RabbitMQ, Docker, Kubernetes, Prometheus plus Grafana. GitHub Copilot is very useful for cloud-native application development when used carefully. Important areas include covered Spring Boot code generation, Docker file creation, Kubernetes YAML, Helm charts, GitHub Actions, testing, observability, security review, debugging, documentation, and runbooks. Cloud-native developers already understand. Check. APIs, microservices, containers, deployment, monitoring, security. Copilot helps speed up implementation, but developers must still verify everything. Key idea. GitHub Copilot is a productivity assistant, not a replacement for engineering judgment.